Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Tuesday edition of the show, but our first podcast of the week because we are live in Indianapolis for the 2025 NFL Combine. We just got done speaking to Bucs General Manager Jason Licht and head coach Todd Bowles. We're going to break down everything that they had to say, especially with the biggest stories surrounding the Bucs. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me, sitting right next to me, is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. Scott, it's great that the PR staff is in Indy, and there was a lot to take away after speaking to the Bucs brass.
Yeah, we had 4 total press conferences today, one each with Jason Licht and Todd Bowles at the podium where all of the NFL reporters could ask questions. Then we had 2 special sessions with just the Bucs beat writers from Tampa with both Jason Licht and Todd Bowles. So a lot to take away. We really drilled down to a lot of topics. Matt, we probably should start with maybe the biggest free agent this year for Tampa Bay. Last year, it was a smorgasbord of players: Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, Chase McLaughlin. This year, it really kind of just starts and ends with Chris Godwin. You look at Ben Bredeson, he's that second tier. Will Levante David return or not? We didn't really get any direction or sense that he might either retire or return. Both Todd Bowles and Jason Licht said they wanted to give Levante some time to mull over that decision. He needed some time coming off this season, just turning 35. So that's kind of been put on pause, but there was some news about Chris Godwin today.
There was a little bit, and the last thing I'll say about Levante David was one thing that may help Levante David come back was Todd Bowles telling Levante this offseason about when they were going to bring back Mike Caldwell, who Levante obviously used to work with. So that made Levante happy, especially because he's going to be working with him at inside linebacker. Now, Todd said that doesn't mean that Levante is coming back, but it certainly helps more than it hurts. Now, obviously, the big news, of course, is Chris Godwin. What does it mean when they moved back the void date to March 14th when free agency starts? What's the conversation been like? It's very similar in this regard to what was going on last offseason, where they love Baker, they love Mike Evans, all of those guys. They love Chris Godwin. They want Chris Godwin back. But I respect what both Todd and Jason had to say, but I thought Jason said it pretty well. You know, he's the one more in charge of the negotiating and the money and the years and all of that stuff, where, you know, he's resilient as ever. He's betting on Chris Godwin to still perform at a very high level despite that injury. But he also acknowledged that there are other variables that come into play with, you know, coming off of that injury, with who's available at wide receiver on the market. Does Chris Godwin want a little bit more money? So there's a lot of factors in play, but one thing we've learned over the past couple of years is don't doubt Jason Licht and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And don't doubt Chris Godwin when it comes back to the injury situation. He's already rehabbed from a serious knee injury and had a 1,000-yard season when he came back too. So that's something that they're considering now. Chris Godwin will turn 29, or actually just turned 29, I believe. So he's a little bit older than he was a couple of years ago when he had that knee injury. But now he's got this ankle injury, and neither Jason nor Todd would give a timetable in terms of when he was going to be available either. Is it going to be OTAs? Is it going to be training camp? They didn't really say, and that's something that when you look at the training staff, they're waiting for some clarity there. And I think that Chris will be back. I've gone on record saying that. At the same point in time, it's a situation where they're not going to rush this deal. I don't think there's going to be too much of a market for Chris because, again, I don't think he can go out there and pass a physical right now and be healthy. So that might help the Buccaneers. I think they're waiting to kind of see what the market is going to be for Chris. Wouldn't be surprised if this deal gets done prior to free agency, prior to March 12th, because there will be some cap significance there in terms of the rollover money from the dead cap. But at the same time, if the best deal happens after he hits the market, and maybe there isn't that robust market because he's still injured, that could help the Buccaneers in terms of some savings on the next contract as well.
Let's play the video of what Jason Licht had to say about this whole Chris Godwin situation. So part of it is when he's up at the podium, and the other part is when we spoke to him in a separate setting with the rest of the local media.
I wouldn't say change at all. I mean, the facts are he had a serious injury, missed a lot of time. There's still some uncertainty that with any injury like that at this point. So move the void so it gives us more options, more flexibility as it pertains to him. And, we just got to make a good decision, but we hopefully can come to an agreement with him because Chris means the world to this organization, to all of us individually, but as an organization as a whole. I mean, nobody has been more resilient than him. We've been down this road before, similar path with him. So nobody's been more resilient and works harder than him. So those are the good things. And, if I were a bet man, I would bet on Chris. But, still facts are we have to weigh through some variables here. There's still some uncertainties, but he's progressing. He's doing, Chris, he's doing everything he can. And I said up there, I wouldn't bet against him. And he's, we still have some time. We still have some time here. We're going to use as much time as we have to consider options and consider, with regards to him, how we construct things or how we do things. So, yeah, that's where we're at right now. We're still kind of in the evaluation stage.
Yeah, so there you have it, Jason Licht talking about Chris Godwin, and he means the world to this organization. That's a big takeaway right there, too. Remember, this is the second best wide receiver in Bucs history, and Jason Licht drafted both of the top Bucs receivers in Tampa Bay history. So they're going to do everything they can to get him back. We understand there's a bit of an echo here. This is a very large loft that we're in, so not sure even if a mic would help. So just bear with us as we do these podcasts. And understand that the content we got for you guys is pretty insane. A ton of stories up on pewterreport.com already. Let's transition to the next topic. We talked about a player the Buccaneers want to be here, actually two, Lavonte David and Chris Godwin. A couple Buccaneers who may not be here, though, in 2025. Some players that are dealing with some injuries. Certainly one of them is Jordan Whitehead, who is still recovering from a neck injury that was suffered in a car crash that caused him to miss not just the playoff game against the Commanders, but also the last game of the regular season. It's a broken vertebrae in his neck. He's supposed to make a full recovery. Anytime you have a neck injury of that significance, when you're a football player whose job is to collide with people, that gives you some pause. What else gives you some pause if you're Jason Licht and Todd Bowles is the fact that Jordan Whitehead had 3 pass breakups, no interceptions, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries, no sacks this year, no splash plays. And the fact that you can save $4.5 million if you cut him this year, once he clears a medical exam and is healthy to play, that I think has some significance. And then you're looking at a strong safety position that has a bit of a void, or does it, Matt?
That is the big question. What Jason Licht had to say about Jordan Whitehead specifically said we're evaluating that, kind of looking into what you just said about saving $4.5 million and no dead cap. He also said another serious injury that didn't happen on the field. We just need to make sure we're making the right decision. Unfortunately, in this business, it's making smart business decisions. We're still evaluating that. Jordan is a great guy. We would love to have him back, but we just need to make sure that he's healthy.
Yeah.
It is very interesting that Todd Bowles said today we're looking at inside linebacker in this position, but did not mention safety because regardless of what happens with Jordan Whitehead, they may have their next starting safety on the roster already with Tyke Smith. So obviously a lot of Bucs fans watching this show know that Tyke Smith as a rookie was the starting nickel corner for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And while he did miss some games and health kind of was a big issue for really the whole team, not just Tyke Smith specifically, but in 13 games, Tyke Smith had 3 forced fumbles and 2 interceptions at nickel. Those forced fumbles and interceptions tied the entire defense for the team lead in each of those categories. And that was in 13 games. Another big part of it, which Todd Bowles kind of mentioned, is that when you're playing nickel, you're on the field for 75 to 80% of the game. But if you're starting at safety or corner, or if you're the starting inside linebacker, you're playing 100% of the time. So I had actually asked Todd Bowles today, is there a consideration of moving Tyke Smith from slot to safety? And he said, yeah, it's a consideration, and it's something that Tyke Smith himself wants to do.
Todd, with Tyke in the season that he had, would there be any consideration to moving him from the slot to safety, just kind of given the situation with Jordan at the moment and how highly you've spoken about Christian Izien as well?
Yeah, it's definitely something we talked about, and going into the spring is something we're going to look at as well. And Tyke wants to play safety, so we're definitely going to be looking at it, so it's an option for us. No, he's very comfortable at nickel. He's our best nickel. Safety obviously stays on the field 100% of the time, with a nickel probably 75% of the time, and he wants to be on the field 100% of the time. Doesn't mean he's not going to play some nickel, but he can play more in the base defense, and we're going to look at that.
So I think the important thing to understand as well when it comes to moving Tyke Smith to safety is that the Bucs are able to do that because a guy like Christian Izien, who Todd Bowles spoke about when the season ended, he mentioned Christian Izien today as well as somebody that really took a big step forward. Jason Licht called Christian Izien the sixth man. And the reason why they're saying all of these great things is because what Tampa Bay could do in this situation is move Tyke Smith to safety next to Antoine Winfield Jr. And let's face it, Bucs fans got robbed because there was big excitement about Antoine and Tyke on the field together, but we didn't see it too much just based on the injuries to really both players. They were kind of two ships sailing in the night. But if you put Tyke Smith back there, the Bucs can throw Christian Izien in the starting nickel position, which he's played before. He's familiar with it, but that wouldn't stop the Bucs from trying to add to the secondary in general and specifically find maybe someone better than Christian Izien at that starting slot spot. So they could draft a corner, and then in that sense, you are having someone that is competing with Christian Izien for that nickel spot. If Jamel Dean is still on this team, we'll get to him in just a moment. And you're also drafting someone that could be your future starting corner. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. Maybe they end up drafting two corners because of the situation going on with Jamel Dean. And that was another big thing that was spoken about today with the Bucs starting corner.
That's right. And kind of the crazy thing, too, is they like Kayvon Merriweather. He was the first player that Todd Bowles actually mentioned today.
He did.
So that's another safety in the mix as well. Not as a starter, but as a quality depth piece. From Jeff the Champ here, who is one of our Pewter Report TV channel members, says, am I the only one who wants to give Whitehead another season? By all means, cover your ass via draft and or free agency. But if he does get healthy, I think he deserves one more year. And that's kind of what I wrote in today's story. It's not that Jason Licht was closing the door on this, and it's a move that you don't necessarily have to do, Matt. You could do this move in the summer. You can see how he progresses. You can see what you do in free agency and the draft. And if you like those players better, then you can always part ways with Jordan Whitehead in the summer, save the $4.5 million. Then you've essentially created that rookie salary cap pool that you're going to need in the summer to sign your rookie class, right? So you don't need that $4.5 million right away. They have some cap room. They can always do some restructures. They might cut Jamel Dean. That will create some cap room as well. But you can see how you fill that safety position to see if you need Jordan Whitehead. And if you don't, then you can part ways with him in the summer, or you can give him another shot. Take him to camp and see if he's ready for a rebound season. They're expecting that from Antoine Winfield Jr., and maybe they get that type of situation from Jordan Whitehead too. So it's something they don't have to rush into, and they can kind of deliberate it and see what happens in free agency in the draft if they can upgrade at strong safety. And if they don't, then you do have Whitehead as a fallback option. And then you have to just cross your fingers and hope that he's healthy and can become that playmaker they expected him to be last year.
It's odd, right? Because we see like during the season when there's injuries at any position, they will bring in guys for a tryout. You see it a lot. I mean, we know the punter situation with the Bucs last year. They'll bring in players for a tryout. In a weird way for Jordan Whitehead, this might be a tryout for him this offseason to prove, one, that he's healthy, and two, that he can still play at a pretty high level, because it was a rough season for Jordan Whitehead in several ways. He wasn't making the big plays. He was on IR before the car crash as well. He had torn his pectoral against the Giants, making a tackle on Tommy DeVito at the goal line. He tore his pec, came back, played a game or two, and then unfortunately got into that car accident. And the fractured vertebrae is a serious thing. Like, there's one thing of just recovering fully. And then there's recovering well enough to play the game of football, which obviously is a very violent sport, and it takes a lot of physicality and things of that nature. So that's a big time question for the Bucs when it comes to the secondary. I was kind of the belief as well before Whitehead got into that accident of I'm willing to give him another shot as well, because we see from year to year things change, different developments happen. But the car accident obviously changes almost everything when it comes to the situation. So if Tyke Smith moves back to safety, I think a lot of people would be fans of it for sure. I know, especially with Jamel Dean at corner, whether or not he's back, regardless, the Bucs are going to be looking for players in the secondary and players that can take the football away.
That's right. Yeah, they're looking for that. One of the guys that has not done that is Jamel Dean. And just like Carlton Davis, who had 9 interceptions in 6 seasons with the Buccaneers, they traded him away last year, Matt, because he was oft injured, didn't make enough plays on the ball, had a high salary. And what did we say last year when that happened? Same thing could happen to Jamel Dean unless things change this year. And that didn't happen at all. We saw 1 interception from Jamel Dean. That was his only interception in the past 2 years. Matter of fact, he's had 8 interceptions in 6 years as a Buccaneer, even 1 less than Carlton Davis did. And unfortunately, this is how Jamel Dean ended his season, on a bike, watching as Josh Hayes gave up a touchdown in the 4th quarter to Terry McLaurin. And you could tell by what Todd Bowles and Jason Licht were saying, they were not happy with the fact that Jamel Dean was not available when they needed him to be. I think he's a good cornerback when he's healthy, but he's just so unreliable. Then he doesn't make plays in the ball either. And you have to, to really wonder, are they going to cut him? And it's a situation where, again, they don't need the cap room right away, but when they have that opportunity to do so, they can save some money to the tune of over $8 million, roughly $8.3 million. And then he'll have a dead cap hit of about $6.8 million. That's okay, because you're saving more money than you have in dead cap room. And that just allows you to either go ahead and sign a free agent corner or draft a corner, or I don't know, Matt, how about this? Do both.
Yeah, why not? Flood the position, as we've talked about. And as we kind of previewed last week on several Pewter Report podcasts, we went position by position on defense. As far as free agency classes go, I would say corner is one of the stronger ones compared to other positions out there. Jason Licht went on to say, we love Jamel. He's done some great things for us. He's been with us for a long time. He hasn't been on the field as often as we would like, and there are some things we have to look at and evaluate the whole landscape at the position and what it's like in the draft. So I am completely on board with whatever they decide with Jamel Dean. I'm still completely on board with drafting a corner and signing a corner as well, because the Bucs need depth everywhere. And it's not saying it's a bad roster, because clearly it's a good one. They made the playoffs 5 years in a row. But I just have this weird feeling, because 2 seasons ago they were very healthy. And Todd Bowles kind of mentioned that today. Last season, they were dropping like flies. This year, I feel like there's going to be a medium. They're not going to be completely healthy, but it's not going to be as egregious. But you just have to prepare one way or another. And it was interesting what Todd Bowles said today, too, when talking about like having rookies, bringing them in. He said that like the easiest position for rookies to learn in his defense specifically, so not across the entire NFL, but he said it was corner is the easiest position in his defense to figure out. So I found that interesting.
And I'll say this too. You go back and you look, Jason Light's only drafted 1 cornerback in the first round. 2016, it was Vernon Hargreaves, right? And he had a terrible rookie season, gave up more passing yards than any other cornerback in football that year. And what do you do with the first round pick? You put him out there in a sink or swim fashion, whether it's Graham Barton, right, as your starting center last year, or whether it's Vernon Hargreaves back in 2016. Those are the guys, when you draft them that high, and you address a need, you put him out there and you let them sink or swim. And unfortunately for Vernon Hargreaves, that was a bust. He sank. He did not swim. And even this year, right? Tyreek Funderburk was the only rookie cornerback on this team, undrafted free agent out of Appalachian State, but he showed enough to make the team. He was terrible, Matt. So as much as Todd Bowles wants to say, it's the easiest position to learn, well, it is if you get a good cornerback, if you get somebody that can actually play. And so the danger is if you cut Jamel Dean and you draft a cornerback in the first round, even, whether it's a Savon Ravel or a Jedi Baron or whoever you draft, they got to be able to play. And to your point, I would rather have a free agent corner that has experience coming in as a starter and then draft that first round corner. Give yourself some room, a safety net, if you will. Have some other talented players to where if that new free agent ends up getting hurt, then you have a high quality backup coming in. Or if you draft a cornerback high and he is not ready for prime time, then you have that cornerback who's a veteran that can step in.
Because I'm a big fan, and there's proof in the pudding, I'm a big fan of kind of the Zion McCollum route. And maybe it doesn't have to be that late of a pick, but in terms of drafting another corner that you can develop for a season the way that Zion was, and he was still thrust into action based on the injuries and stuff, but he wasn't drafted that season to be the main guy in the main corner. And now look where he's at after 3 seasons now going into his 4th season. He's the best corner that they have on the team. So as much as I like Jamel Dean, I personally think the best course of action probably is to let go of Jamel Dean. And then, even though you do have a bit of a cap hit, if you can find a veteran corner that is less expensive than what Jamel Dean was costing you, that player becomes your other starting corner opposite of Zion McCollum. And then you can still draft one pretty early on. Maybe he competes for nickel with Christian Izien, like I mentioned before, or at least you're bringing in a little more depth while also developing players at the same time. And Jason Licht spoke a lot today about the importance of staying in that sweet spot, as he was saying, of not going over the top crazy with like a big splash trade unless it's like truly there, where you can stay competitive. They keep, churning out great players in the draft year in and year out, and that keeps them competitive versus, you make too many big trades, you make too many splashes, and then your salary cap is screwed years later, and, you give up a lot of draft capital. Kind of sounds like another team in the division, but he spoke about that a lot.
And the thing too is, to your point, is what Jason Light's talking about is you have that sweet spot where you have this young wave of players that are coming up. Yaya Diaby's going to need a contract in a couple of years. So is Kalisha Cansey, right? Those are players that are core players that you want to keep, and they're going to command top dollar when they're in free agency. And we're seeing that this year. Jason Licht is not ruling out, as we've already talked about, and Josh Capo has written about, getting contract extensions for Zion McCollum as early as this year, Cade Otton as early as this year, Luke Gedeke as early as this year. So all of those great draft picks that you hit on, Cody Mack will be the next one in that cycle as well, and probably next year. It's great to draft guys and have them on those rookie contracts, but when they become really good players and you want to keep them, it costs a lot of money. And so if you go out and you get a big free agent signing and that player doesn't hit, I've used Bryce Up as an example with coming off a 10-sack season with the Jets. He goes to the Eagles. He was inactive as a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. $17 million a year, had 2.5 sacks. So there is a danger in free agency because if you miss and you pay top dollar for one of those big players, it can really clog your cap for a couple of years until you get to that point of where you can get out of it and not have to have the dead salary cap money be so high. So just some things to consider. We have a lot more topics to get to. We do have a couple super chats to attend to. So let's get to those right now.
Thank you to Mike Wells for this $5 super chat. Says, super pumped to see you guys at the Combine this week. Can't wait for all the content coming this week. Thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, we already have a lot of articles out on pewterreport.com.
Bailey, how many do we have? We had 5, 6. How many articles up? 7 articles already on pewterreport.com.
Yeah. Plus some stuff on our social media on Twitter and Instagram. We're going to have some YouTube videos. There's some shorts already, but we're going to have some more expanded videos too with what Todd and Jason had to say. And then obviously we still have the rest of the week to talk to all the prospects, and we'll find out who the Bucs have interviewed, formal, informal, all that good stuff. So thanks for the kind words. But we're just getting started. This is pretty much day one. We got in last night and have been rocking and rolling already.
We already have 3 stories in the works for tomorrow morning on pewterreport.com on a lot of different players, so stay tuned for that. Also, too, tomorrow, as Matt was alluding to, we're going to have our our draft combine tracker. when it comes to the prospects that the Bucs have visited with, have already met with, had those formal interviews or informal interviews. You can find that on pewterreport.com. We'll have that draft tracker up all week in terms of the combine interviews. So make sure you check that out on pewterreport.com. We'll have defensive linemen and linebackers tomorrow. Probably a good time to promote the shows we have coming up. We're doing 4 podcasts this week, folks, but they're going to be on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. So a little different. And the one for tomorrow is going to be Bucs target pass rushers and inside linebackers. That is Boston College edge rusher Donovan Ezeraco. I did a Pewter Pulse on him just yesterday. Make sure you check that out. He is one of those players that could be in the mix for the number 19 overall pick. If the Buccaneers want an edge rusher early, he more likely will be there than a player, say, like Mike Green or James Pierce or Jalen Walker or Mikael Williams, some of those other top edge rushers, and certainly Abdul Carter will be gone by then. So that's tomorrow's show, and we'll have a chance to talk to Donovan and plenty of the other top edge rushers. That's a position that Todd Bowles said he's going to be keeping a close eye on. They need more pressure from the outside.
Yes.
That was a theme today. So that's going to be tomorrow's show at 4 o'clock. And then on Thursday, Bucs looking for ball hawks. That was a word that Todd Bowles even said today. They're looking for guys that can take the ball away, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, interceptions. That's what they're looking for, guys that create takeaways. And that guy right there, in very short extended duty because he had an ACL injury, East Carolina cornerback Savon Ravel had 2 interceptions in 3 games to start the season. He was set up for a monster senior year before that knee injury. He'll be one of the players the Bucs are looking at as well. That is our show for Thursday. And then Friday, one of the other positions Jason Licht and Todd Bowles will be looking at, Bowles even alluded to it today, they wanted their playmaking wide receiver, and that's Ole Miss wide receiver Trey Harris right there. He would be a good player to pick in the 3rd round. Jason Licht's found some 3rd-round wide receivers in Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan. So that is the shows we have coming up for you live from the Combine here, and we're talking to these players and having all of the scoop on who the Bucs will be talking to as well live from Indianapolis.
Yeah, looking forward to all of it, and thanks everybody for joining us this week and for all the shows that we do. Let's get to a couple of more comments and super chats. We'll start with our guy Hezo813, who's now been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for
awesome.
6
Thank
months.
you.
So thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate you. Hezo813 says, SR, Matty Diamonds, I know you guys talked to Todd and Jason off the record. Do either of you foresee the Bucs making a huge splash either in trade or free agency that most probably won't see coming?
I think it has to be the right deal. It's got to be the right deal for the right player. Jason Licht is not going to force anything. And I go back to that Jason Pierre-Paul trade. That was a blockbuster trade that came out of nowhere. Jason Licht might have even done that for a 2nd-round pick, Matt. But when he was able to fleece David Gettleman, the former Giants GM, for a 3rd-round pick, that's just one of those he could not wait to turn into the NFL and say, hey, we're doing this trade. Yeah. So I don't think Jason Licht's going to do anything too risky. It doesn't mean that he's opposed to doing a big splash signing or even a big trade. He even talked about that today.
He did.
But I think it has to be a right, sensible deal that that most NFL people in the NFL community would look at and say that's at least a win-win, or that the Buccaneers maybe even made out with, right? So let me just use an example, and this is not coming from Jason or Todd, but like if they were to get, say, Trey Hendrickson for a 2nd-round pick, I think something like that where you're like, wow, like that's really good value. You kept your 1st-round pick and you got Trey Hendrickson. So I'm using that as an example. Don't take that and run with it. But I think that's the type of deal that Jason Licht would be looking to do.
Jason essentially put that on the table today when asked about like the big splash sign.
Right.
You know, he couldn't say Myles Garrett. He couldn't say Trey Hendrickson because they're under contract with other teams. But he said that he likes the value pick more. And he pretty much said the JPP trade without saying the JPP trade. And I think obviously that's a big example. You know, finding Shaq Barrett for cheap and then letting him prove it and then signing Shaq for a big contract. We saw it with Baker as well. We've seen the Bucs do that time and time again. I mean, remember, it was the Saints that gave big money to Derek Carr. It was the Falcons that gave big money to Kirk Cousins.
That's right.
The Bucs eventually gave big money to Baker Mayfield, but that was after Baker Mayfield proved it. I mean, even look at last season.
And he's still the third highest paid quarterback in the NFC
Even
South.
look at last season. What were we talking about a lot? Matthew Judon became available, and he went to the Falcons, and that was putting the Falcons over the top in other people's voices.
Right.
But it did not, essentially. So let's get to this video of Jason kind of talking about his thoughts on being aggressive, making the big splash via a trade this offseason specifically.
Yeah, it's tough. There's players get mentioned by name. They're still with teams that you mentioned that, of course, we all know how great they are. It's not as easy as just picking up the phone and saying, we'll offer you, whatever it is. The team has to want to trade them, and then you have to do a deal with them, and you have to weigh in how that's going to affect your future, what the age of the player is he going to be on the decline, and are you setting yourself up for a situation where a few years later where you have a huge dead cap number and you've given up multiple high picks. So I'm not saying that we would never do that. It's just a lot of things that you have to take into consideration where you don't have to give up as much, pay as much, but you get quality production. But I'm never going to say that we're not going to make a dynamic trade for a big splash. But I mean, we try to pride ourselves if the right one comes available.
Let's get to another super chat. Thank you to Tate Miller for this $1.99. Says, where could the Bucs target a wide receiver in the draft?
Well, the Bucs have had a lot of success in the third round, right, Matt?
They have.
And what that would allow you to do is, if the Buccaneers don't make any trades, if they have their first and second round pick, you have to think that they're going to address one of the big needs in free agency, whether it's inside linebacker, outside linebacker, your edge rusher, or a cornerback, right? Mm-hmm. So that's going to take one of those three needs off the boards, I would think, and maybe even more. Jason Licht even talked about it. He loves going into the draft, being able to pick the best player available and having all the options open because they have addressed some needs in free agency. One thing that Matt and I talked about, I'll just kind of pause on this topic for a second here, then I'll get to your question about the wide receivers. In our Pewter Insider chat on Friday, we talked about it, and I even wrote about this in my SR's Fab 5. The Buccaneers may be making a splash in free agency, but instead of it being one player like a Zach Bond, $15 million, or a Josh Sweat at $16, $17 million, they might be flooding the position with more cheap guys. And I say cheap before you throw a fit. Shaq Barrett was a cheap guy, 1 year, $5 million deal. Baker Mayfield was a cheap guy, 1 year, guaranteed $4 million, ended up being $7 million deal. But if you get maybe a Joseph Osai from Cincinnati, Calebon Chason from the Raiders, right? Those are some kind of young, up-and-coming pass rushers. I know Josh Capo likes Josh Uche, who's been with the Patriots and now with the Chiefs. One of those guys to come in on a cheap prove-it deal, maybe two guys, get two of those guys in, then draft another edge rusher with a premium pick in the first or second round. Then you've got Braswell. Then you've got Yaya Diaby. You flooded the position. So even if you miss on one of those guys, you still have enough of a safety net at the position. So I think the free agent splash might be coming in volume, the volume of free agents, signing a bunch of corners, signing a bunch of edge rushers, rather than signing one big guy. So I just want to kind of adjust your expectations a little bit. Doesn't mean that they're not going to sign a big name like a Dre Greenlaw or a Chavarius Ward, but they might try a different approach. There's more of a shotgun that gives them more opportunities for hits just in case there's a miss.
And Jason just loves his draft picks so much. He doesn't want to depart from them. And I'm fine with it because I think there's a way to close the gap of, listen, Christian Izien totally has worked as an undrafted free agent. We've seen in Jason's career finding some of those gems like, Cam Braid and things of that nature. But then you also have the Tyreek Funderburgs that haven't worked out, or Keenan Isaac, who every year is in training camp and he makes one play, but he's never really making this team. You can close the gap with the prove-it deals that have worked with Shaq and have worked with Baker Mayfield. But if you sign 2 or 3 prove-it guys, maybe 2 of the 3 don't work. But you know what? That's only money for one season. And if the third guy works, well, then you sign him to a bigger deal the following offseason, or at least you got good value out of him for 1 year, and then another team goes and overpays. So it's all about flooding, really.
It is. And the Eagles did that last year, and I wrote about it in the Fab 5 as well, Remember, Devin White was their big offseason signing. 1 year, $7.5 million. They signed Zach Bond, who was an all-pro, the best linebacker in football last year, to a 1 year, $3.5 million prove-it deal. That was half of what Devin was making. Then they also added Warren Burks for a 1 year, $1.25 million deal from San Francisco. It ended up being Burks and Bond starting for the Eagles in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs because Nakobe Dean was hurt. And Devin White didn't even really make the team. So
no, he got cut and went to Houston.
Exactly. So that's could be a formula the Buccaneers follow, getting volume and increasing the likelihood that you hit on some of these free agents, because free agency is actually more risky than the draft, especially when you're a good drafting team like the Buccaneers. You asked about where they could find a wide receiver. If they address some of these needs, and if a guy like Luther Burden from Missouri is there at number 19 and he's the best player on the board, they could take that player. The fact that Todd Bowles said he's looking at edge rushers, cornerbacks, inside linebackers, and wide receivers lets you know that this team has one eye on the present, which is building up that depth chart at wide receiver. Mike, Chris, if he's back, and I believe he will be, Jalen McMillan. You want another starting caliber wide receiver at wide receiver 4, just in case there's an injury, or 2, as we saw last year. But Mike Evans is not going to play forever. Chris Godwin's not going to play forever. Even if he signs for another 2 or 3 years, you want to keep developing those guys and have them in the hopper so that when you do have Mike deciding to retire or another injury that hits, you've got starting caliber wide receivers ready to go and step in as starters rather than the Ryan Millers, Trey Palmers, Raheem Jarrett's, etc.
I mean, think about it. Even if Mike Evans, let's just say this is the last year of his deal. Let's just say he wants to play 1 more year. So 2 more seasons of Mike Evans. If you draft the receiver now, and let's just say it's a first-round pick, you would still have control of that wide receiver for 3 more years, even after Mike Evans is no longer there. And that's
4 more, including the 5th-year option.
Right. That's including, well, if he plays 2, So, and that includes still having Jalen McMillan, and then we'll see what happens with Chris Godwin as well. So it's important to keep that in mind. And I've been kind of the belief, and I wrote an article a week or 2 ago about that the Bucs shouldn't just not draft a wide receiver in the first round if Chris Godwin is even back, just based on with the Bucs being at 19, it's very much about best player available. And if they feel that wide receiver is, now I've said this too before because people are like, why would they do that? They got Mike and Chris and all that stuff. If it comes down to 19 and it's an edge rusher, a corner, and a wide receiver, and they feel the same way about all 3, well, then by all means, go and get the edge rusher on the corner because that's more of an immediate need.
Right.
But if you see a wide receiver and you're like, this is our guy, he has to be on this team, and you don't feel the same way about who's there, corner, and edge rusher, and inside linebacker, then go with the wide receiver. You know, the Bucs have plenty of other picks. They have free agency. They can address their defensive needs in other ways, including all of the other rounds. A lot of people think like first round, that's it. Like that's the only way that they can address their issues on defense. And that's just not true.
Especially with the way this team drafts. You've got Zion McCollum as a starter in the 5th round. You got Bucky Irving as a starter in the 4th round. You have Tyke Smith and Jalen McMillan as starters in the 3rd round. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers front office, Jason Licht, his scouts, they find diamonds in the middle rounds, in the late rounds. And so you don't have to be that first rounder just to be able to start. My first round pick every morning is a can of Celsius, Matt.
That's right. Arctic Vibe is my first round pick for Celsius energy drinks. And we love Celsius. They are the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. And they have all of these fantastic flavors. You heard me just mention a couple. Scott's a big fan of the orange, and you're always getting new flavors and trying out new flavors. Don't forget about the Playa or the Playa Vibe, which is a pina colada flavor. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, maybe you're on a work trip like we are, maybe you're on vacation in a different area, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a health and fitness store, a Publix, a Stop and Shop, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega, you know you love Celsius and you want more, and you want to get it in bulk, you can over on Amazon with the Subscribe and Save. Get that variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors, and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Completely up to you. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com.
That's right. We would like to let you guys know we greatly appreciate all of you for watching these shows, and make sure you tell your friends about Pewter Report TV. It's our YouTube channel. You guys have put us on a huge growth trajectory over the past year, and just want to thank you for it. We're on the way to 18,000. We're at 17,600 some change. We had a couple Pewter Pulse videos come up over the weekend, as well as Adam Slavan's top 10 takeaways on Monday. We've got some other video content coming, as Matt talked about, plus more podcasts on the way this week as we're live from Indy. But we do want to take the time, as always, to greatly appreciate the Pewter Platinum members that we have: Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, Zach Jarvis, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, and Zach Brannigan. Thank you so much. We usually typically do the roll call on the first show of the week, but there's so much going on in Indy. We're going to have to put roll call off until next week. So please forgive us. It's not even Monday, it's Tuesday. But there's just a lot to talk about. And we had some coaching changes happen on Friday that we haven't even really addressed on the podcast. And that's kind of important. We need to get to that because Todd Bowles wants more out of his 4-man pass rush.
He does. He does. That was something that Todd spoke about today. We have it in a video. We can play it in a little bit because it covers a couple of things. But the fact of the matter is the Bucs just weren't getting it done with their pass rush. Yeah, the blitzes work from time to time, but the Bucs were at their best when they won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs with that 4-man pass rush. Some of it is the players, no doubt about it, but some of it was the coaching, and the Bucs have made some coaching adjustments. Larry Foote, who was the inside linebackers coach and played inside linebacker in the NFL, he is their outside linebackers coach now. But Larry Foote previously coached outside linebacker for the Bucs when they won the Super Bowl and early in his start in Tampa Bay. He was there when Shaq Barrett recorded a team best 19 and a half sacks. That's a franchise record.
Made 2 Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
Jason Pierre-Paul also
double-digit sacks. Yeah, all that stuff. So he goes back to outside linebackers coach. At inside linebackers coach is another familiar face. It's Mike Caldwell, who had previously left the Bucs, I believe, after the Super Bowl winning season, or maybe the year after, to go to Jacksonville. But he's back in Tampa Bay, a good friend of Todd Bowles, very important. So he's back coaching the inside linebackers, which very much could be a different room this year, just based on whether or not Levante David comes back. You have Servassier Dennis, but outside of that, Caldwell's going to be in charge of molding probably a lot of new players and probably some young players too.
Yeah, I think this is a really good move by Todd Bowles. I've been very critical of George Edwards, and I love the fact that George Edwards is going to be taking on the pass game coordinator. He's more of a cerebral thinking man's coach, and really I can see why Todd likes him because they're both kind of cut from the same cloth. He is going to be overseeing the secondary and the back 7. That was what Larry Foote was doing. Now Larry Foote will take over what Casey Rogers was doing, which is the run defense, the front 7, the pressure packages, etc. And I like Larry Foote's mentality. And I'm a big believer, and I said this on the Pewter Pulse video, and you can check it out on Pewter Report TV. Pass rushing is primal. And I've had conversations with Warren Sapp and Simeon Rice about this, some of the best to ever do it. So this is not just my opinion. This is coming from legends, Hall of Famers. And there's an art to pass rushing. There's a technical side of it, but you have to have a hunter mentality. These are hunters and slayers. And the job is to hunt the quarterback and kill drives. And you have to have a certain type of mentality and bring that out in your players. And as I said in the Pewter Pulse video, the 2 best defensive line coaches that I've seen in terms of coaching pass rush, Rod Marinelli and Joe Cullen, they both had a little bit of a screw loose. They both were very energetic, high-intensity guys. And you look across the board at this coaching staff, that's Larry Foote on this team. And you see from this picture, this is back in 2019, Larry Foote is hands-on. He's got the pads on.
He wishes he was still playing.
He wishes he was still playing. Very hands-on, very different approach from what you saw with George Edwards, which was more of like, I'm going to tell you what to do, and I want you to do it this way. Larry Foote's like, let me show you how to do it. He'll get down in the stance, and he'll do that. And that's the kind of coach that Marinelli was and Cullen is. And I really like this move. I think it's a tremendous move by Todd Bowles. I give him a ton of credit for making these changes. And the interesting thing about George Edwards going to become a pass game coordinator, and I think it might be from the box, right? He might have that bird's eye view in the press box rather than being on the sidelines. But this is going to be a move that's going to help Todd Bowles this offseason, because Bowles is going to be spending a lot of time with the offense.
He is. So that's another big thing that we saw a couple of years ago when Dave Canales came in as the offensive coordinator, a first-time play caller for the Bucs. Now that's going to happen with Josh Broussard, and Bowles just wants to make sure, and he's not going to take anything away from the defense. He's still going to be running that, but Bowles needs to make sure that this offense doesn't lose a step, or at least doesn't lose too much of a step, because this is a group that was top 3 and top 4 in like pretty much every important NFL stat, whether it was points scored, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, all that stuff. They were the cream of the crop. There were not many better teams than the Bucs on that offensive side of the ball. Now, are there going to be some growing pains with Josh Broussard? Sure. I mean, you have the same offense intact, which is good, and the same philosophy, but now there's a whole year of tape of that offense. Right. So Broussard will bring in some different stuff. But Bowles needs to make sure that everything is going the right way as well. And Bowles even put that onus on himself today. I got to be better at bringing coaches along and Josh Broussard along, and that I have that responsibility. So he's going to rely on some of the new coaches or the new coaching adjustments on that defensive side to make sure that the offensive side is where it's at. And that doesn't mean that Todd Bowles is going to be calling plays and things like that on offense.
No, I'm with you. I love this move because Edwards has been in this defense for 2 years. He knows what Bowles wants. Same with Caldwell, same with Foote. So there's great continuity on that side of the ball. Then you throw in the Kevin Rosses, the Nick Rapones, et cetera, that when Bowles steps away to work with Josh Broussard and bring him along and kind of help him out, because Broussard's going to be facing what every Sunday, Matt? Defenses. Yeah. That's what Bowles' specialty is. He's a defensive-minded coach with blitz schemes and all sorts of pressure packages. And I think it's a smart move by Todd Bowles, because Bowles knows there's going to be a lot of new faces on defense this year from the draft, from free agency. It's going to take some time for those new faces to kind of gel and get that on-field chemistry continuity. Therefore, you need the unit that wore the Superman cape last year, the offense, to continue to wear that cape while your defense gets antiquated to each other adjusted to each other and familiarized with each other and developing that continuity and that chemistry. You can't have the offense take a step back because Josh Broussard's a new play caller. Can't do that. If you do, then you're running the risk of not having a good offense and not having a good defense at the start of the season, and then losses begin to mount and your season gets away from you. So I like the fact that Bowles is going to say, we have to make sure the offense is still our strong suit while our defense improves from the start of the season on. And I think that's the right approach.
And that's being a head coach. Remember, Todd Bowles is the head coach. I know he does a lot on defense, so that doesn't mean he has to or should ignore the offense either. I do want to play one last video from Todd Bowles, because I thought this was very intriguing, because as we see from Todd Bowles, and a lot of NFL coaches do this, but Todd specifically in the Tampa market, he doesn't throw players under the bus. He doesn't give a lot of information at press conferences, and understandably so. And he doesn't always reveal his true feelings about something. Again, for the protection of the players in the organization. That was not the case today when he was talking about who he wants and things like that. He made the message clear. He wants ball hawks on this team, and he doesn't care at what position, whether it's outside linebacker or corner. So this video is Todd talking about that. He talks about the 4-man pass rush and really what this defense overall needs.
Yeah, I'll be very interested in looking at a lot of guys on defense, obviously, the edge rushers, the corners, and the inside linebackers for me, which I'll be looking at. But I'm really interested in the wide receivers as well. We got to do a better job rushing forward. We can get pass rush with pressure, but you don't want to pressure all the time. I think we got to do a better job with 4. Right now, for me, I want ball hawks, and whether that's a down guy, a defensive lineman, whether he bats balls down or gets strip sacks, whether that's an outside linebacker that does it, whether that's a backer that can punch the ball out or get turnovers, whether that's a safety that can hit and draw the ball loose or get turnovers, whether that's a corner that has a nose for the ball. We need ball hawks, we need turnovers, we need guys that are very astute in the game and can see things and go make plays and go get them.
Todd Bowles covered a lot of ground there, and Briar Greaves can cover a lot of ground for you too, whether it is your auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance. There's a lot of different ways that Briar Greaves can help you get your family insured with the right coverage that you need. Unlike other agents, Briar Greaves has access to 90% of auto carriers in Florida. Having an agent like Briar Greaves will ensure that you're getting the most competitive premiums possible. No more wondering if you're getting the best deal on your car insurance, because you will know what every other company has to offer, including Geico now. That's right, Briar Greaves just became an exclusive Geico agent. Only a handful of agents in Florida can make that claim. Geico has a great appetite for younger drivers, high school and college age kids, and because they're some of the most expensive burdens for parents' auto insurance costs. Briar Greaves Insurance has been able to save families thousands on their insurance costs, and they can help you too. Folks, I speak from experience. I'm not a Geico customer through Briar Greaves. They actually found out for me and my family, it's travelers insurance. But that's what I love about Briar Greaves. They'll do all the legwork for you, find the best deal, get the most competitive rates for you and your family. So do what I did. And I learned this from the late, great Mark Cook, who was a former Briar Greaves insurance customer too. Give Briar Greaves a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. They can cover your antique car, your RV, your motorhome, and so much more. And also visit the website at briargreavesinsurance.com. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, briargreavesinsurance.com, and tell them Pewter Report sent you.
Let's get to some super chats, starting with Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. He said, Scott, how much about the inner working of the Bucs do you know but aren't allowed to share, or do you share 99% of what you know?
No, there's no way I can share 99% of what I know.
Can't do that.
I always tell people, everyone's looking at me over here. I can share about half. I can share about half of what I know. I can share about half of what I know, and that's the nature of the business. When you're an insider, you've got sources. You have to maintain that trust, and I've been able to do that for 3 decades now with different regimes, different general managers, head coaches, position coaches, scouts, etc. Is having that trust, but it's also my job to educate, inform, and entertain our audience, the Pewter people, you guys and girls, in terms of what we do know. And it's great when we kind of preview things and we drive home things like the George Edwards, they need a better pass rush coach. And then you see those things materialize, whether that's inside information or we're kind of, helping to push along the narrative and push the front office and the coaching staff to do certain things. We talked about ball hawks. That's something that we've talked about for months now. They need ball hawks. They need that. So when you hear Todd Bowles kind of parrot you and say, we need ball hawks, I'm looking for ball hawks here, that's a good feeling, because it means we're seeing things the same way that the organization does, and we're reporting on those things. And so in some cases, we are giving you guys a heads up on some moves that are coming down the pike. And that's the fun part about this job too, is giving you guys the insight. Sometimes it has to be through a subtle wink and a nod.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes, it has to be an educated opinion, but that's kind of how we get this information across to you guys. That's why I still do this job. It's fun. Maybe one day I'll do a tell-all book. Some of what I know would absolutely blow the doors off the barn.
And that's why it's important to be a Pewter insider.
Yeah.
A little more information there.
That's
right.
right.
You go on the Bucs cruise, you run into us, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Tate Miller, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Asante Samuel Jr. to the Bucs on a prove it deal. He doesn't fit the size of what Tampa Bay wants.
He doesn't. The interesting thing though is if you look at the nickel position, right, the last couple of years they've had Christian Izzian, 5'10", 5'9", Tyke Smith, 5'10". So in the slot, you can get away with that because you have to be more agile, then you have to have that straightaway speed. But Todd Bowles said he likes those players with the straightaway speed in terms of those longer outside cornerbacks. Zion McCollum is like the prototype there.
Yeah.
Darian Porter from Iowa State is a player that is 6'2". He was at the Senior Bowl. Didn't impress me a whole bunch at the Senior Bowl, but he has good tape. He's a player on Josh Capo's radar. Certainly, I'm going to do some more digging into his tape. 6-year player at Iowa State. Took him a while to get on the field. That's a little troubling there, but yeah, from a size standpoint, we'll see if Todd has some allowances. One thing he did say when he was asked about smaller cornerbacks, and this was
I was thinking about that. He was up at the podium, and I was like, you're asking the wrong guy about that.
Exactly. But when it comes to those cornerbacks who are 5'9", as long as they could tackle well, they had some tenacity about them.
Jump high,
to mitigate that lack of height. I think those are some things that Bowles is looking for.
Thanks to Mike Wells for another $5 super chat. As Mike says, great show, guys. Tell me, given that we only have 6 draft picks, are there any mid-tier free agents you're keeping an eye on that we might make a move on?
One of the guys I'm really intrigued by, and I haven't heard his name, but sometimes when I won't get on that road. One of the guys that has intrigued me is the Bengals outside linebacker, Joseph Asai, just because he kind of fits the same profile that Shaq Barrett. Barrett was an undrafted free agent at Colorado State, went to the Broncos, but he was behind Bradley Chubb. He was behind Von Miller. So he was kind of that third wheel there. And when he was on the field, he was productive. Asai missed his rookie season with an injury. I liked him coming out of Texas a lot. I think he gives you some speed and some juice off the edge. I want to say he's 26, former third-round pick out of Texas. But he had 5 sacks last year, kind of filling in a little bit for Sam Hubbard. Trey Hendrickson, obviously, on the other side helps out as well. But he is a player that hasn't commanded enough statistically to fetch a big deal in free agency. So he might be one of those guys that gets overlooked. He's not the Josh Sweat. He's not the Khalil Mack. He's not that proven guy. But he might be the Shaq Barrett. And that's kind of what the Bucs are looking for. They're looking for the next Shaq Barrett. They're looking for the next Zach Bond, the guy that gets the 1-year, $3.5 million deal with the Eagles, and the change of scenery just blows up and becomes that all-pro player. And there's a lot of value in that, because if you get that guy, the risk is incredibly low. The reward is huge. And as we've talked about, Matt, get a couple of those guys, right? Because you have more cap room this year. That might be the best way to spend that money, is try to find multiple guys that are the next Shaq Barrett. And then if you hit on 1 or 2, fantastic. And if you miss, it's not going to cost you much.
As far as like mid-tier players, I think inside linebacker might really be a spot where they go after that, whether it's like a Robert Spillane, a Jamie Sherwood. That might be a position where they sign a couple of guys and then potentially draft one as well and just completely overhaul that position, kind of based on force and necessity anyway, especially if like Levante David doesn't come back. So I think inside linebacker might be a big one.
They like Servassier Dennis, but both Todd Bowles and Jason Licht caution, they like him a lot, but it's just, can he stay healthy, right? He's recovered from the shoulder surgery. He will be good to go for OTAs. He's a very heady player, as Todd Bowles said.
The headiest of the heady.
That's right.
He got 2 headies
right.
in a compliment from Todd Bowles today. So the headiest of the heady.
The problem with him is just he's not been able to stay healthy for these 2 years. Now, the shoulder injury did come with him from Pittsburgh. Maybe he should have got that taken care of between his rookie and second-year season, but he didn't want to jeopardize missing an offseason and falling further behind because he didn't play a lot as a rookie. But they're very high in Servassier Dennis. He's one of the guys in the equation for the inside linebacker position, for sure.
We have a $49.99 super chat from Black Gold 1999. Good to see you again, Black Gold. Thank you so much for this generous super chat. Who says, hey guys, just stopping in. It's been a minute since I caught the live. I'm going to have to rewind the show. Work in the oil and gas industry, so I haven't been able to catch the live show. We really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in.
That's awesome.
And the beauty of all of our podcasts is they are on our YouTube channel. So if you're able to join us live, we love that, but we understand, everybody's got lives and are busy and doing different stuff. So you can always watch it at any time. But thank you so much, Black Gold 1999. Hope you're doing well. And thanks for popping in.
Yeah, that's awesome. We greatly appreciate that. A couple of shows we have coming up for you tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a big one, right? We're really excited about tomorrow's show because it's got two of the positions that Todd Bowles is really going to be keeping an eye on, and that is edge rushers and linebackers. So they're going to be looking for the outside pass rushers. There's Boston College edge rusher Donovan Ezeraki, whether it's him or Mike Green from Marshall, James Pierce from Tennessee. There's a lot of first-round caliber guys, Mikael Williams from Georgia, Jalen Walker, he could be there as well. So we're going to be talking to those pass rushers and the inside linebackers tomorrow, as well as some defensive tackles too. That's a position that Todd Bowles also said, interior defensive line. That is tomorrow's show at 4:00 on Wednesday. On Thursday, Todd Bowles even said it, Matt, we have this graphic built before you even said the word. Bucs looking for ball hawks, East Carolina cornerback Savon Ravel. That's him right there. And then on Friday's show, another position the Bucs want to address. They want another playmaking wide receiver. They want to find another Jalen McMillan. Heck, another Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
That's Ole Miss's wide receiver Trey Harris right there. So those are the shows we have coming up the rest of this week. It is Tuesday, and it's interesting to start our show week on a Tuesday rather than a Monday. But it just means one thing, folks. It means that it's already all-day happy hour at Walk-Ons. And that's right. You can get the happy hour all day long on Walk-Ons. 3 locations in the Tampa Bay area. That's the Wesley Chapel location by my neck of the woods, down by Matt, where he lives, by the stadium. It's Midtown Tampa. They also have one in Lakeland. You can see the happy hour drink prices: $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wine, $5.49 22-ounce domestic drafts. All day happy hour on Tuesday. Tomorrow and on Thursday, 2 happy hours, 3 to 6 p.m., 9 p.m. to close. And when you go there, make sure that you get rewarded for it. You can download the Walk-Ons Rewards app. It's a brand new app. Earn, save, and win. And Matt, when you do that, you get free mozzarella logs when you download the app and go in for the first time. Then you can also try their amazing wings with their new Southern bourbon sauce for a limited time only. It's a fantastic sauce, and you're going to earn 100 bonus points just for trying the sauce. So 2 great things you can do when you're in Walk-Ons. Get in the happy hour. You can get those wings with the Southern bourbon sauce, earn 100 points, and make sure you use that Walk-Ons Rewards app. And that's going to help save you some money and get you some freebies on future visits. Matt, we had a lot going on today. We couldn't even get to it all on the show. The good news, we have more shows this week. We haven't had the super chat.
Yeah, we have a couple of super chats to get to. Jamel Sirleaf, thanks for the $1.99, says, do we have a defensive coordinator by title?
Yes and no. Todd Bowles is the defensive play caller. They had co-defensive coordinators last year and the year before with Larry Foote and with Casey Rogers. Rogers departed to the Detroit Lions. So what they have now is they have kind of 2 distinct titles. You've got Larry Foote as the run game coordinator, and you've got George Edwards as the pass game coordinator. So they're not really co-defensive coordinators by title. They have individual titles, but those are the roles that Larry Foote served. Larry Foote served as the pass game coordinator, and Casey Rogers served as the run game coordinator. But there is no one true defensive coordinator. It's Todd Bowles. It's his defense. He runs the show.
Right.
But he splits up these duties. The big difference, though, is they're kind of switching spots. They're moving Larry Foote up front with the front 7, and they're moving George Edwards to the back 7. George Edwards won't be a position coach, but he will kind of oversee the communication between the linebackers and the secondary, because, Matt, that's been a problem the last couple of years.
Yeah, Bowles referenced some communication issues today, talking about last season. So we'll see what type of adjustments are made with these coaching adjustments as well. Thanks to Henry Gigante with the $4.99 super chat. First and second round picks must be best player available in light we trust. I totally agree with that, especially in the first round, but I think they can get away with it in the second round too. And our last super chat, thanks to Bill Vincent for this $5, says, I still can't figure out the Charlie Strong hire. Your thoughts? Yeah, so Charlie Strong, the last time he coached defensive tackles, defensive line, was at Florida when Kevin Carter was a Florida Gator. But he's incredibly smart. He's a high-energy coach. The players love him. He comes from the college ranks. He was at Alabama in his last stop in 2013 as a defensive assistant under Nick Saban. So he brings a lot of unique experience to the table.
And when you already have some guys like Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey, and you got a guy like Logan Hall who's in a contract year, coming off a big year, I'm not saying that the group doesn't need a lot, but it's not like he's starting from the ground up and having to build this room. It's kind of already built. And I think that he is another sounding board voice for Todd Bowles. And I think he's going to bring some fresh ideas too from the college ranks. So I always like to give coaches a year or two to see how it plays out before I dish out any critiques. And we'll see. But both Jason Licht and Todd Bowles were very high about this move. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I get that it didn't work when Charlie Strong was at Texas, but like he had a pretty good winning program at Louisville. It began pretty good at USF.
Yeah.
It didn't work out towards the end, but I mean, I don't know. If the Bucs are not successful this year, I don't really think it's going to be because like the defensive line coach,
Right.
couldn't bring it
Exactly.
for the Bucs this season.
Yep. Well, we wanted to let you all know that we greatly appreciate all of our Pewter people in the chat. We read the comments, and we love the comments too after the show. Make sure that you're giving these videos a thumbs up and leaving a comment. And if you're looking to support Pewter Report in another way, we ask that you become a Pewter Report TV channel member. Doing that comes with some perks. We've got some really cool emojis and loyalty badges for our members. The Pewter Pro members get early access to our videos. The Pewter Premier members and the Pewter Platinum members, they get those Pewter Insider podcasts that we do. We're not doing one this week because of the adjusted work schedule, but typically those are Fridays year-round at 1:30, and that's an extra bonus video that we do in addition to getting some of the perks that you see there. So help us out at Pewter Report. Find the right membership level that suits you and your budget, and consider becoming a Pewter Report TV channel member. It's a great way to help our channel as we continue to grow. We're on our way to 18,000. Make sure you're hitting the subscribe button. And if you have a business that you want to help score some new customers, we can help you with that. Make sure you advertise with Pewter Report. Sponsorship opportunities are available. Email me at sr@pewterreport.com. I'm happy to have a conversation with you, and we can help get your business more customers. And you can help Pewter Report do fun things like go to Indianapolis for the Combine, Mobile for the Senior Bowl. We're going to be at West Palm at the NFL owners meeting, and travel budgets, they are what they are. And that's how you can help Pewter Report with your dollars. We go to these locations, get the scoop right from the source, and then give it back to you guys to make you guys the most educated Bucs fans around.
All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. If you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We will see you tomorrow live from Indy again for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.